Hey guys, this is Daniel from Displays by Daniel again. Previously we had talked about how to plane, rip, and cut our dimensional lumber for our farmhouse, coffee table, well really living room collection series. I keep saying our, and I need to give credit to Anna White, who initially created the blueprints over a decade ago. She's a very talented engineer. Well published in her own right. I've taken those blueprints that she gives away for free, she has a website, and modified them and made them my own. But the core and the initial map done was hers. So I wanted to give credit to that, and I keep saying they're mine. We're gonna sand now. I use a 120 grit sandpaper. That's important. You don't wanna go a 60 or an 80. We took all a 30-minute video to plane them down and rip them down to the dimensions we want. And a 60 and an 80, it's just too much. You're dealing with soft pine. It's just too much. You're gonna change the dimensions that you worked so hard to establish. A 220 is gonna take forever, and it's more fine than we need. A 120 is really where you wanna be. 220 is okay, but 120 or finer, I should say, but I wouldn't go more coarse than 120. I've already pre-sanded all of these in an effort to shorten the video. And the cool thing, I don't know if you've realized this by now, but this is all rough construction grade lumber, 2x4s and 2x6s and 1x12s and 2x12s from Home Depot. It's the boards that everyday people are gonna use. I'm not working with pre-milled mahogany or walnut or oak. I would like to, but I mean, the people that I sell to can't afford those tables, and I can't afford to build them really. So at any rate, I'm using lumber that everyday people can afford every day. And you followed that from the purchase to the planer to the table saw to rip it and joint it and create that nice 90-degree edge that we talked about, to the miter saw to cut it to length, to my table to be sanded and built. And this is how you can build your own coffee table at home if you would like for $40 or maybe $50. And I don't know why I'm showing you how to do this, because if I teach you how to build your own, why would you buy mine? But that's what God told me to do, so that's what we're gonna do. At any rate, we're gonna sand this real quick. I wanna bring your attention, I left one board that needed to be sanded. You see, I'm gonna pay special attention to these edges here. You can see our rip cuts, the little saw teeth marks. We don't want those. We want those gone. I will lightly hit this because when I stain it, I want it to take stain evenly, and I get asked that a lot. How do I achieve my consistent stain patterns where it just looks consistent all the way through, no blotchiness on my cut ends and what have you, and that's through meticulous sanding. In this case, I'm not really going to need to bear down on the wood. I'm going to let the weight of the sander do what it needs to do, because it's already pretty good. I'm not going to focus on this end that much. These defects, they're the natural defects, and natural defects are what you're going for in a rustic series, in a farmhouse series. Those are beautiful, and it give it that worn, used, that'll use it up, wear it out, make do or do without. It gives it that look. I don't want to touch those. These imperfections are beautiful. What I want to remove are my imperfections, the imperfections that I put into the wood when I ripped it. Those are not beautiful. There's probably some deeper meaning in that, but we're going to let it go. So we're going to hit that real quick, and you'll see I'm going to start, and I'm going to continuously move. I don't want to stay in one spot too long. I do not want to change my dimensions that I've worked so hard to achieve. So So, and that's all I've done is take off all those saw marks. That's it. And here on this surface, I'm really just worried about getting all the oils from my hands and my tools off, anything from shipping and storing and all that. So it'll take stain more evenly. These are my uprights, as you figured out in the video. They're a little more important. These are my shelves, and really only two surfaces of these shelves are going to show. But I sanded them all anyway. This comes back to, let's take a little bit of pride in what we're doing. Let's care about it. You worked hard for the $40, $50 it took you to buy the lumber. It's going to take you more or less the same amount of time to do it crappy as it is to do it more better. At the end of the day, you can have two tables. You can have a table that looks all right because the color of the stain you chose is pretty, but your wife feels the need to put a table runner over it. Or you can have a table that's so much more better than that, that when your wife goes to put a tablecloth on it, you say, well, let me get that cloth off my beautiful table. And that's what we want. It doesn't take a lot longer to achieve that. It just takes a little bit of planning ahead of hand. We work a little bit harder now so that I don't have to work harder later. I pre-drilled a lot of my Craig's jig holes. I'm using pocket hole screws for this. You don't need to. We're going with a Rustic Farmhouse series. So it's not the end of the world if screws show, really. I mean, if you think about your decking, screws show there, and that doesn't diminish the look of your deck. It kind of adds to it. Or you could use a matching wood filler and fill those and sand them flush. But you could come in from the outside and screw it if you don't have a Craig's jig. If you don't have one and you're looking to get into woodworking, it's kind of an essential tool. I would get one if I were you, one of my first purchases. At any rate, when I do go to put my holes here, and this is what I'm talking about, let's take a little bit of pride in what we do, and let's think about it, let's visualize it. These knots are beautiful, and I know they're going to stain up beautiful. I've got a knot on the outside here, I've got a knot here. What's down is going to be the outside of my table, so it's going to stand up like that. And that's what's going to be on Front Street, right? That's what you're going to see. So that's where I want that knot. I want that knot down and down. Because in this case, there's going to be a tabletop up here, so that's going to be covering. That's just like this board. Look where I put my screw holes. Putting this surface and this surface out where you're going to see it. And look how beautiful that is. That's going to stain up gorgeously. And that's how I place my screw holes. And just take a little bit and think about it. And your end result is going to be, look, we've made this lumber plain, true, flush, 90 degree, however you want to say it. It's going to last as long as you want to keep it. We're going to build it properly so there is no warpage, there's no stress on the joints, it's never going to pull apart. And then we're going to stain it and we're going to clear coat it so that that stain is going to be protected forever. So let's take a minute. If we're building a table that might be in our living room for the next 20 years, what's it cost us to spend 30 seconds to think about, oh, do I want that sanded edge here? Do I want it there? Where do I want to put my screw holes? The most important part of building beautiful things is to take a minute and think. So I want this board like that, which means I need to place my screw holes on that surface right there. Just like that. So for those of you that don't know, the Craig's jig comes with 3 holes. These 2 you could use for 1.5. These 2 are perfect for a 2x4. And I'm screwing into a 2x4, so I'm going to use those 2 outside holes. I set my depth gauge to 1.5 inches, which is the thickness of my board. Craig's jig comes with different setups. This one automatically determines the thickness of the board. Other ones don't. You have to set it to 1.5 inches, but that's not really an issue. Also, if your board's not exactly 1.5 inches, if in my case it's 1 7/16 inches because I planed it down, that's fine. So. And so that's what you can do too. I mean, you can mate it up and make sure, but no, that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. Exactly what we want. This video is going to be a little longer. It needs to be. This is probably, I don't know. I think the most important part of the process is the part you're doing right now. I think that. But this is certainly one of the more important pieces. So another thing to think about, back to thinking ahead of hand. This is going to be sitting upright, right? These are my feet. My little furniture sliders are going to be down here, which means this shelf, that's going to be the top shelf you'll see when you're sitting on your couch. This will be down towards the floor. You're not going to see it. So that's where my screw holes are. This one's flipped because there's going to be a tabletop up here. This is the side of the shelf you're going to see. There's no screw holes here. That's why my little pretty knots here. My screw holes are up top where they're going to hide. So let's start measuring, clamping it together. I'm going to go 1.5 inches. How did I come up with 1.5 inches? Well, I did it in my head where math is done. But that's the beauty of it being my blueprint, or at least one that I've made my own, is I can make up the math as I go. So I like the look of that bottom shelf being 1.5 inches off the floor, so that's what I'm going to do. You need to leave just enough room for your pet, your cat, your dog to get their toys, their balls stuck under there, so you have to move the table and get them out. You have to think about these things. When you make your lines, come on in here, honey. Don't get lazy and do that. Don't make a line. Give yourself a V. Give yourself a target to hit. Now I'm going to come back. I really need to sharpen my pencil. That's pretty bad, but we'll make it work. So I'm actually going to be 1 7/16 inches off the ground. My line is exactly 1.5 inches, but I'm going to cover my line up by a hair because I don't want to have to sand it back off. Really, that's what it amounts to. I want to build on a nice flat surface. So this is actually good. Let's problem solve. Come on around where they can see my line. So what I've done is I'm holding this, that board is perfectly square with my building surface, but you can see it's not straight with my line. Now what I could do, because it is straight with my line at the bottom, I could run a screw in the bottom and then rock it back and screw the top, and I could do that. But let's just take a minute and figure out why that's not lining up, because it should. I've got a theory that I just haven't cleaned my tabletop off. It's not a theory, I haven't cleaned it off, but I have a theory that that's what's affecting it. But that should be lined up. It's not, so let's find out why. And first of all, let's come over to this other board and see if it maybe just an issue with my line. Could be, because that looks better. Aha! So I am. This board is perfectly square and it's perfectly straight with that line. So the problem is this line. So now let's find out, is the problem the line or the board? I can always tell you it's the board because there's some glue there. So let's see. So the way I'm going to check that is I'll pull a square on the line from this side and then I'll pull it again from this side. And look at that. There it is. That's the problem. The side I pulled the square from. So let's sand that line off, start back over, pull the square from the other side, and I bet it lines up better. speaking of a headband, I didn't. Oh well. It's done now. But that's kind of an illustration of what I'm talking about, really. Like, let's take a minute, stop what we're doing when we encounter a problem, because you're going to. When you are working with rough construction grade lumber, you're going to encounter problems. So let's take a minute, stop what we're doing, and figure out why, and fix it. So let's see if we made it more better, shall we? More better. Check that out. I almost don't even need to manipulate it at all. I don't need to manipulate it at all. We like that. So, I'm going to clamp, and a word on clamps. For the longest time, I was using cheap, well, I'll cover their name up so they don't sue me, cheap clamps from a store known for cheap tools. Maybe by the harbor. At any rate, they worked, okay, but you're gonna get what you pay for. When you clamp down on them, they warp, they cock, they whatever. I'm not gonna complain about them because they cost almost nothing, and I made a lot of money using them. I made a lot of money. But when you can, get some better clamps. These things, cover their name up because they're not paying me. But these things are awesome. They really are. They work well, they're enormous, they generate 600 pounds of pressure, which is stupid, but that's what they do. So, get our clamps ready. We're not going to clamp yet because we are going to wood glue. When you build these tables, you're going to glue every joint. You do not want all of the pressure being on your screws. You just don't. And that's another reason I like these clamps. The foot of these clamps is large enough to cover the entire 2x4, and it creates an even pressure, and it keeps my boards from warping and cupping and what have you. All right, we like it, we like it. We're pretty well lined up. We're gonna switch to our driver for our pocket hole screws. I like this one a little more better. It's got more character. We're going to use a 2.5 inch pocket hole screw. I pretty much only use 2.5 inch and 1/4 to the point that I don't even know if they make other sizes. I've never had to use them. I build a lot of furniture, so I keep me a big bucket at 1 1/4 inch. That's for my 3/4 inch to 1 inch thick boards, and I keep me a big bucket of 2.5, and that's for all my 1.5 inch dimensional lumber. So anyhow. If you haven't spit out wood glue, you're just not doing it right. So, clean it off a little bit. Clean it off a little bit. Get us a little bit of wood glue on there. And I'm only putting it where my screw holes are. Not that the screws matter, but that's where the board is. So, the other part's actually going to show. I don't want glue there. You see I'm spreading it out. I don't want it pulled up. I want as much surface area as I can covered. There doesn't need to be a lot. When you do glue, you need to let it set. If you're not screwing, that is. You need to let it set 30 minutes before you jack with it. And I don't know, I think my bottle says 24 hours, but that seems excessive. I'd say 12 hours before you really stress the joints any. So all I'm doing is I'm lining up my lines a little bit, and I want to be on the line. I want to be on that gamma, so I don't have to. It's important because I don't want to have to try to sand those lines off. They're going to be in 1/4, and I'm going to gouge my wood. Then I'm going to be upset. My wife will record it. You guys will laugh at me. All right, so that's perfectly square. We like it. We like it. Let's clamp it in. Actually, let's not. That's gonna put pressure up here, so let's go ahead and glue this as well. And get the glue on there, because I'm not gonna get to it later. You always want to glue all your joints. Like I said earlier, I believe I've said it a couple times, but I'm going to keep saying it because it's important. The softer the wood you use, the less you want to rely on screws to hold said wood, because it's soft and screws are not soft. All right. More better. I could pull a tape, I don't need to, I got my lines. So when I clamp this, I'm just gonna snug it up. Like I said, I know this is a longer video. I don't care about your feelings. Now I saw all that board cock as I clamped, so I'm gonna stop and figure out why. What happened? What happened? Why did you do that? Well, it cocked, I guess, because that's what I needed to do. It certainly looks all right to me. Okay. There's maybe a touch out. I don't know, boy. That feels pretty good to me. So I've got a slight twist to this board. That's cool, so I'm going to show you. So if I perfectly flush it here, perfect 90, you can see a little bit of daylight there. And if I perfectly flush it here, you can see a little bit of daylight at the bottom. So this board is twisted that direction. That's cool. So you're going to learn a pipe fitter's mentality. Pipe fitter, no problem. We're not throwing away a $1,000 piece of pipe, I can promise you that. And much like pipe fitting, for a rustic table, and again, this is because you're going to use box store lumber, so that's cool. It's not going to be perfect, and as I had said in a previous video, the planer is not going to take the twist out. It's going to make it a little more better, but it's not going to take it out. So what I've done there is I've split the difference. Now, you'll see a little bitty gap here, and a little bitty gap there. I split that difference. So it's slightly twisted on both sides rather than twisted an 1/8 inch on one side. That's okay. Again, I'm not making, it's a rustic farmhouse look, a little bit of twist, you're not gonna see it. You would maybe see it if I were doing a solid shelf, but I'm doing slatted shelves, there's gonna be a gap in between these anyhow. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten that up. One thing to note, if you'll come on around and show them that joint real quick while I get a cloth. You can see the glue coming out. Take a minute, do yourself a favor, and wipe that off right now. Because once it sets up in that corner, you're never going to be able to sand it out. It is going to be there forever and ever, amen. So it's going to be the Kenny Chesney song of glue. Take a minute, get you a damp cloth and wipe that out. So, make sure. Some over here hiding. All right, I'm down, I'm clamped. Not exactly square, or not exactly not square. A little more pressure. I want to be careful with these clamps because 600 pounds of force is enough to crack a pine 2x4. So I'm going to start at the bottom. So that's the most important joint. I'm going to create down pressure. Not that I should need to, but I'm going to do it anyway. My board did not cock. So that's good. But that's another reason to put your hands on it. You got the clamp holding it, but you put your hand on it, you'll feel the board move. Do yourself a favor, don't do what I've done in the past while I was learning. If you feel the board move, stop and fix it. Because if you had it where you wanted it and you felt it move, then it's not where you wanted it anymore. And you're going to be tempted to say, it'll be all right. want to run these screws in slow, especially the first one, because it will push or twist your boards as it bites in sometimes, and you don't want to move everything. If you run it slow, it just goes better, and that pine is soft, and as that head mates up at the bottom of my pocket hole, I want it to stop. I don't want to keep going and strip out my threads. You can see as soon as I feel my hand cock, I'm stopping. Again, I apologize. I know most people have used a drill, but like I said from the outset, I'm going to talk to you like you don't know anything about tools. We like that. So I'm going to turn the piece around so you can see what I'm doing here. Maybe actually we just go that side. I really don't want to move it. So all I'm doing is I want it flushed up. Maybe waited just a touch too long. Let me get that out of the way for a minute. Damn videos. Hand me that orange hammer behind you, please. Orange, not that. Orange, please. Thank you. So I'm using a dead blow, rubber mallet. I don't want to dim my wood. There we go. There we go. I just waited too long on my wood. My wood glue set up a little quicker than it really should have, than I thought it would. Now, we knew that would be perfectly square because I was going off my lines. This, I had no lines. I'm flushing it up. It is flush up on that side, but you notice it's not flush up right there. So what I'm doing, probably the better way to do it, the bigger the square, the more accurate. Well, if you didn't have a clamp, I don't need a clamp there anymore. That, okay, so it does need to come out just a hair. There we go. There we go. So the goal here is I want it flush with the top of my uprights because my tabletop's going to sit on those uprights and I don't want there to be any gap. And again, I can already feel it in my hand. There's a little bit of twist to this board too, which makes sense because it was all cut out of the same board. So we're going to split that difference again. But the important part, like we talked about, is I'm square perfectly all the way across. So if I'm square here and I'm square here, then it's all square, and that's going to come into play when I make my X. Because if you don't have that right, you're going to make the X and your angles are not going to be the same, and it's just going to be a pain. But I'm going to teach you how to do that if that happens. The other important thing to note, I am flush here and here, because like I said, there's a slight twist. So I'm not going to be flush here, and I'm not going to be flush there, but I am flush right there. Well, I was until I moved. There we go. I'm flush, I'm not, but I am square. So let's send it. Let's put a clamp on that bad boy. Put a clamp on that bad boy. That's good. I'm going to clean out our wood glue. That's good. Make sure that's down. Looked like it wasn't for a minute. I just don't like it. See, I'm gonna stand that up for a minute, make sure it's where I want it. I don't like it. Something about it doesn't look right. So again, there's another example. Let's take a little bit of pride in what we're doing, even if it means annoying people on YouTube because my video is longer than it needs to be. Let's figure out why I don't like it. I don't like it because it's not right. That's why I didn't like it. So my instinct was that that was not sitting flat, and it is not. I bet it is now, though. I have found, as a man, that there are very few things that you can't fix with the application of the right hammer. And if hammering it doesn't fix it, we'll just try a different hammer. So what I'm going to do, actually, is I'm going to screw this side, and I'm going to work it over. So this, I am going to pick my screw holes a little bit because my board is twisted and I want it to be flush. So I'm going to screw my flush corner, and I'm going to start with that. The reason I did that is because I want to throw my drill. Now I want to tap this out, but I didn't want that to move because I like that where it is. There we go. And I don't want to hammer on my wood any more than I have to. Oh, there it went. That feels good. That feels real nice. So now I have been beating on it. I'm going to double check the square. I don't really anticipate it being out of square, but I'm going to figure out how to do that. I'm going to do it like this. Oh yeah, we like that. That's beautiful. More better. More better goods. Also, if you're not talking to yourself while you're building, you're doing it wrong. So, check your notes. You need to chew wood glue. You need to have wood pile in the corner. You need to have a dog yelling at you. And you need to talk to yourself. Boom. So, and you notice again, I started with my flush end here because that's the one I wanted to hold. The important part is that I'm not up or down, because if I'm up or down, I create a gap. If I'm up, I create a gap here that you're going to see. If I'm down, I create one here that you're going to see. And that just comes from experience. You're not going to be able to think of that stuff, all of it, ahead of hand, if you've never built it before. But as you build more and more and more, you will. All right, guys. So we're going to take our clamp off. Wipe that wood glue off. And I'm going to pay special attention here to the edges that actually are going to be seen. So that's this surface and this surface. And I want that wood glue. And you notice that's why I cheated my line here. That's why I didn't lay my line out up top. I did it at the bottom. Because if it's 1.5 inches, I could have also went 3 inches, obviously, and went to the top. You're going to see the top, but I didn't want to have to sand it off. So, and all I'm doing is I just want that wood glue gone because it's going to dry yellow. And it won't take stain. It's going to be hideous. And you are going to play heck trying to sand it out of these corners without gouging your wood. So, boom. That is a perfectly square, no rock, no rock. Imagine an X in there, like that. Another one on the back side. The tabletop up here. Yeah, we get our imagination going now. And a whole bunch of these mamma jammas, just like this, going across, slatted on the bottom. As big as you want. So, and the cool thing about these, they're scalable. So this is actually a custom size I'm doing. My stock size that I like to run is 44 by 22, and it's I don't know why. That's what I like to do. One, because the shipping costs. If you're gonna make these to sell, you need to think about shipping costs. You're gonna wanna do the math on the lumber and the stain. None of that matters. I can build this table for maybe 40 bucks. It's gonna cost me 90 to ship it, more than twice. It's the shipping costs you need to think about. And that's why I build how I build. It's the sizing I build. But I do offer customization on Displays by Daniel, which is on Etsy, plug. You can get anything up to and including that size. You can get bigger than that if you want to pay the shipping. I'm not going to eat a $300 shipping cost on a $200 table, but if you would like that, you can. I think that's as much as I want to touch on in this video. I'm going to go ahead and build out the other upright. I'm going to do some math, calculate the distance from here to Venus and Mars and Jupiter and Neptune and all that, and we're going to come back and we are going to see, I'm going to try to build these X's differently than what I've done in the past, and I'm going to let you guys see the learning process live, because I think there'll be some benefit from that. You'll get to see the cussing and the throwing and the stress. But in the past, what I've done was one long diagonal, bottom to top, right? Which is real easy. That's a 60 degree parallel cut, real easy. And then I did two smaller ones, top to bottom, and then they made it up in the middle to that one that ran across. The issue with that is you don't want screw holes showing. If it's for your own home piece, you don't mind screw holes, that's fine. But if you're selling lumber, you do not want to ship out screw holes. You're not going to be able to compete with people if you're showing screw holes. You're not going to make money. So what I had been doing was button it up, toenail on a screw here, and gluing it. And then the other one covered that screw hole, and I glued it. But that always left one leg of the X with no screw in it, right? Because you can screw from the top and the bottom, because those are hidden. But that left one leg of the X right here with no screw in it. And I worry about UPS and FedEx shipping, and you need to too. Trust me. Now I'm probably getting sued. But I worry about them damaging my goods. So what I would like to do, if you will, now I'm going to make those X's out of this lumber. It's 2x2. It's 1.5 by 1.5. I ripped it myself. Don't buy the 1.5 by 1.5. It's rough. It's warped. Take a 2x6 and rip them down. You'll get 3 out of 1 2x6. You're going to get perfect boards. But what I would like to do, if you can imagine my X, right? What I would like to do is I want to notch exactly halfway at an angle, so it's going to be a compound miter. It's going to be a double compound miter. I'd like to notch at an angle halfway into the wood and notch at the opposite angle halfway into the wood, so that these pieces interlock, right? So I don't have to glue or screw at this joint in the middle. I only have to screw from the bottom and the top. And then I can hold it with 2.5-inch screws in the bottom and the top and wood glue, and you'll be able to beat that bad boy with a sledgehammer. It's not going to go anywhere. That's my goal. It can be done. Whether it can be done by me or not, we're going to find out in another video. Thanks, guys. This is Daniel from Displays by Daniel. Have a great day.